Sarah Thompson, a 44-year-old English language and literature teacher, had been working at Oak Hill for over 15 years. Colleagues described her as a talented educator capable of inspiring even the most challenging students. Sarah was divorced and raising two teenage children. Despite personal difficulties, she always remained professional and was respected by students and their parents. Jason Miller and Alex Reed, both 19 years old, were seniors. Jason was the captain of the school swim team, an honor student who dreamed of attending Stanford. Alex, on the other hand, had a reputation as a rebel: average grades, frequent absences, and a tendency for risky stunts. Despite their differences, Jason and Alex had been friends since childhood and were inseparable. No one could have predicted that the fates of these three people would intertwine in a tangled web of passion, jealousy, and violence that would lead to a tragic outcome. It all began in September when Sarah Thompson took a group of seniors under her wing to prepare for their final literature exams. Jason and Alex were in this group, the former by choice, the latter at the insistence of his parents, who were concerned about his academic performance. Sarah quickly noticed Jason's potential and began to pay special attention to him. She admired his analytical abilities and deep understanding of literary works. Gradually, their communication went beyond the usual teacher-student relationship. They began to stay after class, discussing not only academic topics but also personal interests. Alex, observing the growing closeness between his friend and a teacher, experienced mixed feelings. On one hand, he was happy for Jason, but on the other, he felt a pang of jealousy and a desire to also attract Sarah's attention. He began to put more effort into his studies, trying to impress the teacher. By November, the situation had intensified. Jason, encouraged by Sarah's attention, began to show romantic interest in her. He left notes with quotes from romantic poems on her desk and gave small gifts. Sarah, flattered by the young man's attention and feeling lonely in her personal life, began to reciprocate. Alex, noticing changes in his friends' and teachers' behavior, decided to act. He started staying after class more often, asking for additional help in exam preparation. Sarah, feeling guilty about her infatuation with Jason, tried to give Alex no less attention. Gradually, she discovered that behind the rebel's mask was a sensitive and profound nature. By the end of the first semester, Sarah found herself in an emotional trap. She had strong feelings for both students, understanding how unethical and dangerous her behavior was. Jason and Alex, in turn, began to compete for her attention, which led to tension in their friendship. The situation reached a critical point at the Christmas party for teachers and seniors. Sarah, losing caution, danced with both young men, not hiding her affection. This episode did not go unnoticed by other students and colleagues, sparking the first rumors about the teacher's inappropriate behavior. The winter break that followed the party only intensified the emotional tension between the participants in this love triangle. Sarah, tormented by guilt, tried to distance herself from both students. However, Jason and Alex, encouraged by her attention at the party, became even more persistent in their courtship. Thus ended the first stage of this complicated story, laying the foundation for future tragedy. None of the participants yet realized how dangerous a game they had begun and what irreversible consequences it could lead to. In a quiet suburb of Portland, Oregon, Oak Hill High School was known for its high academic standards and friendly atmosphere. It was here that a drama unfolded that would shock not only the local community but the entire country. Thus ended the first stage of this complicated story, laying the foundation for future tragedy. None of the participants yet realized how dangerous a game they had begun and what irreversible consequences it could lead to. With the start of the new semester, the situation began to heat up. Sarah, realizing the impropriety of her behavior, tried to restore professional boundaries. She began to spend less time alone with Jason and Alex, trying to maintain a more detached demeanor in class. However, her attempts to distance herself only intensified the young men's persistence. Jason, confident in his feelings for Sarah, began to show jealousy. He started monitoring her every interaction with Alex, interpreting any gesture or word as a sign of preference. His behavior became increasingly aggressive and possessive. Alex, in turn, perceived Sarah's detachment as a personal challenge. He redoubled his efforts in his studies, trying to impress her. At the same time, he began to manipulate the situation, deliberately provoking conflicts between Jason and Sarah. By March, the tension had reached a critical point. At the school's literary evening, Jason publicly read a poem of his own composition, unmistakably alluding to his feelings for a forbidden love. Although he didn't name names, many guessed who he was referring to. Sarah was shocked and humiliated, while Alex seized the moment to offer her comfort and support. After this incident, rumors about inappropriate relationships between a teacher and student spread throughout the school. Sarah's colleagues began to view her interactions with seniors with suspicion. The school principal called her in for a discussion, expressing concern about the situation. Under pressure from all sides, Sarah decided to cease all personal contact with Jason and Alex. She announced her decision to them, emphasizing that their relationships should remain strictly within the teacher-student framework. This news provoked a strong reaction from both young men. Jason, feeling betrayed, began to show signs of depression. His academic performance sharply declined, and he started skipping swim practice. Parents and friends noticed changes in his behavior but attributed it to pre-exam stress. Alex, on the contrary, reacted with cold determination. He began collecting evidence of Sarah's inappropriate behavior, secretly recording their conversations and saving correspondence. His plan was to blackmail the teacher, threatening to reveal the information to the school administration. In mid-April, the situation took an unexpected turn. Jason, in a state of alcohol intoxication, attempted to break into Sarah's house late at night. Neighbors, hearing the noise, called the police. Although Sarah didn't press charges, this incident drew law enforcement attention to the strange relationship between the teacher and her student. Alex, learning of what happened, decided it was time to act. He arranged a meeting with Sarah, threatening to reveal everything he knew unless she agreed to continue their relationship. Sarah, cornered and fearing for her career and reputation, agreed to his terms. Thus, by the end of April, a month before the final exams, the situation had reached a boiling point. Jason, suffering from rejection and jealousy, was on the verge of a nervous breakdown. Alex, manipulating Sarah's fears, had gained power over her. And Sarah herself was trapped by her own mistakes, seeing no way out of the situation. None of them suspected that the worst was yet to come, and that their actions would lead to irreversible consequences that would change their lives forever. None of them suspected that the worst was yet to come, and that their actions would lead to irreversible consequences that would change their lives forever. On May 1st, 2 weeks before the final exams, events took a tragic turn. The day began as usual. Sarah conducted her classes, trying to maintain professional behavior despite internal tension. Jason was absent from school, which was unusual for him so close to exams. Alex, on the contrary, was particularly active in class, constantly drawing Sarah's attention. After classes ended, Alex approached Sarah and reminded her of their agreement to meet in the evening. He hinted that he had new information that could definitively ruin her career. Sarah, feeling cornered, agreed to meet in the park near the school at 9 in the evening. Meanwhile, Jason, who had missed classes due to a severe hangover, had been wrestling with dark thoughts all day. He had accidentally seen Alex's correspondence with Sarah on his friend's phone when it was left unattended during a recent party. The realization that Alex had been manipulating the situation and possibly gained reciprocity from Sarah drove Jason into a state of uncontrollable rage. In the evening, around 8:30, Jason, under the influence of alcohol and emotions, headed to Sarah's house. He planned a confrontation, hoping to get explanations and possibly regain her favor. However, as he approached the house, he saw Sarah getting into her car. Deciding to follow her, Jason got into his own car and drove after her. Sarah arrived at the park a little earlier than the appointed time. Nervous, she got out of the car and headed to a bench near a small pond, the place Alex had chosen for the meeting. Jason, having parked nearby, watched her, hesitating to approach. At 9:05, Alex appeared. He looked confident and even smug. Approaching Sarah, he began the conversation, obviously making some demands. Sarah, judging by her gestures and posture, was frightened and subdued. Jason, unable to contain himself, got out of the car and slowly approached the talking couple. He heard Alex threatening Sarah to reveal all the information about their relationship if she didn't agree to his terms. Sarah, crying, begged him not to do it. At this moment, Jason lost control of himself. He lunged at Alex, knocking him to the ground. A brutal fight ensued. Sarah, screaming and trying to separate them, accidentally received a strong blow and fell, hitting her head on the rocky shore of the pond. In the heat of the struggle, Jason grabbed a large stone and struck Alex's head several times with it. When Alex stopped moving, Jason, as if waking from madness, realized what he had done. He turned to Sarah in horror, hoping to find help or comfort from her, but found her lying motionless, with a pool of blood spreading around her head. Panic overtook Jason. He tried to revive first Sarah, then Alex, but to no avail. Realizing he had done something irreparable, he fell into a state of shock. For some time, he wandered aimlessly around the park, not knowing what to do next. Finally, the instinct for self-preservation took over. Jason returned to the bodies, searched Alex and Sarah's pockets, taking their phones and wallets. Then he pushed the bodies into the pond, hoping the water would hide the traces of the crime. After this, he got into his car and drove away, without a clear plan of action. Thus ended this fateful day, turning a love triangle into a bloody tragedy. Jason, once a promising student, became a murderer. Sarah and Alex paid with their lives for their mistakes and manipulations. And the quiet park became a crime scene that would shake the entire community and mark the beginning of a complex investigation. Thus ended this fateful day, turning a love triangle into a bloody tragedy. Jason, once a promising student, became a murderer. Sarah and Alex paid with their lives for their mistakes and manipulations. And the quiet park became a crime scene that would shake the entire community and mark the beginning of a complex investigation. The next morning, May 2nd, Sarah Thompson's absence from classes caused concern among her colleagues. The school administration, remembering recent rumors, decided to act cautiously and first tried to contact her by phone. Receiving no answer, they contacted the police with a missing person report. Simultaneously, Alex Reed's parents, worried that their son hadn't returned home and wasn't answering calls, also contacted the police. Jason Miller, on the contrary, showed up at school looking pale and confused. His unusual behavior didn't go unnoticed, but in the commotion caused by the disappearance of the teacher and student, it didn't receive due attention. The investigation began with questioning Sarah's colleagues and Alex's classmates. It quickly became clear that rumors had been circulating in the school about inappropriate relationships between the teacher and two students, Alex and Jason. This gave the investigation its first direction for the search. On May 3rd, a passerby noticed something resembling a human body in the pond of the city park and called the police. Divers arriving at the scene discovered the bodies of Sarah and Alex. An examination established that both had died from craniocerebral injuries before being thrown into the water. The case was reclassified as a double homicide. Investigators began a thorough study of the victims' lives. They discovered that Sarah had recently changed her will, leaving a significant sum to an educational fund, and had taken out a large loan from the bank. This led to the idea of possible blackmail. In Alex's phone, found in his room, there were deleted but recovered messages confirming his relationship with Sarah and his intentions to manipulate her. Jason Miller quickly became the main suspect. His strange behavior after Sarah and Alex's disappearance, as well as scratches on his hands, which he explained as resulting from a fall during a run, attracted police attention. During a search of his room, they found blood-stained clothes hidden in the back corner of the closet. On May 5th, Jason was called in for questioning. Under the pressure of evidence and skillful interrogation by an experienced detective, he broke down and confessed to the murder. His account of the events of that night was confused and emotional. Jason claimed that he hadn't planned the murders and had acted in a state of affect, provoked by alcohol and jealousy. Jason Miller's arrest came as a shock to the community. An exemplary student, athlete, and pride of the school turned out to be a murderer. Jason's parents, devastated by grief and shame, hired the best lawyers, hoping to obtain leniency for their son. The investigation continued for several more weeks. Investigators studied every detail of the relationships between Sarah, Alex, and Jason. Dozens of witnesses were interviewed, hundreds of messages and surveillance camera recordings were analyzed. Gradually, a complete picture of the events leading to the tragedy emerged. Special attention was paid to the role of the school administration. It turned out that some teachers and even the principal knew about rumors concerning Sarah's inappropriate behavior but didn't take proper measures. This led to a separate investigation and subsequent dismissals. By the end of May, the police had completed gathering evidence. The case was transferred to the prosecutor's office for preparation for trial. Jason Miller was charged with double homicide, which threatened him with life imprisonment. The tragedy at Oak Hill became the main news topic not only in Portland but throughout the country. It raised acute questions about safety in schools, the ethics of teacher-student relationships, and the role of society in preventing such tragedies. The school community was deeply traumatized, and significant efforts by psychologists and social workers were required to help students and teachers cope with what had happened. The tragedy at Oak Hill became the main news topic not only in Portland but throughout the country. It raised acute questions about safety in schools, the ethics of teacher-student relationships, and the role of society in preventing such tragedies. The school community was deeply traumatized, and significant efforts by psychologists and social workers were required to help students and teachers cope with what had happened. The trial of Jason Miller began in September, 4 months after the tragic events. The Multnomah County Courthouse in Portland was packed. Journalists, relatives of the victims, and the accused, former classmates and teachers all wanted to hear the details of the case that had shocked their community. The prosecution presented extensive evidence of Jason's guilt. Crime scene photographs, forensic results, and surveillance camera footage showing Jason's movements on the night of the murder were displayed. Special attention was given to the analysis of electronic devices of all participants in the tragedy, revealing a complex network of relationships and manipulations. Jason's defense was built on several key arguments. Firstly, the lawyers insisted that their client had acted in a state of affect, provoked by alcohol intoxication and emotional stress. They presented testimony from psychiatrists claiming that Jason had been suffering from depression and anxiety disorder in the months preceding the tragedy. Secondly, the defense tried to shift part of the blame onto Sarah Thompson and the school administration. They argued that the teacher's unethical behavior and the inaction of school leadership had created the situation that led to the tragedy. Witnesses were called to confirm that rumors about inappropriate relationships had been circulating in the school long before the murder. The culmination of the process was Jason's own testimony. He appeared before the court pale and gaunt, clearly suffering from the realization of what he had done. Jason detailed the development of his relationship with Sarah, his jealousy towards Alex, and his friends' manipulations. He described the events of that fateful night, repeatedly emphasizing that he hadn't planned the murders and deeply regretted his actions. Alex's parents and Sarah's children gave emotional statements about how the tragedy had affected their lives. Their testimonies left no one in the courtroom unmoved. After 3 weeks of hearings, the case was handed over to the jury. The deliberation lasted 2 days, indicating the difficulty of reaching a decision. Finally, the verdict was delivered. Jason Miller was found guilty of second-degree murder of Sarah Thompson and first-degree murder of Alex Reed. The jury concluded that while Sarah's death was unintentional, Jason had acted with conscious intent to harm Alex. In sentencing, the judge took into account Jason's age, his clean record up to this point, and clear signs of remorse. Nevertheless, the gravity of the crime demanded severe punishment. Jason was sentenced to 25 years in prison for the murder of Sarah Thompson and life imprisonment for the murder of Alex Reed, with the possibility of parole after 40 years. The sentence elicited mixed reactions in society. Many considered it fair, given the brutality of the crime. Others believed that the court had not fully taken into account the role of Sarah Thompson and the school administration in creating the situation that led to the tragedy. Parallel to the criminal process, civil lawsuits were proceeding. Alex and Sarah's families sued the school district, accusing the administration of negligence. These cases were settled out of court, resulting in large compensations to the victims' families and promises to implement serious reforms in the school management system. The sentencing of Jason Miller formally concluded this tragic case, but its consequences continued to be felt for a long time. Oak Hill High School and the entire educational system of the state of Oregon underwent a serious revision of rules and procedures concerning teacher-student relationships.